Kilian Jornet, the ultra runner. He's talking about his training.
Specifically for Western states, the 100-miler. And, well, he hasn't read it in 15 years.
Exactly. And that's the hook, right? He's 37 now, says himself he's a very different athlete. The data he shares, the methods, and, the why behind the changes, especially considering his age and experience.
Okay, so let's start right there. This core idea that he's different. The sources make that super clear.
15 years on, 37 years old. He actually says he can run faster now, maybe performs better metabolically.
But there's always a but.
The big one is recovery. It just takes much longer.
Right, and that's not just like a small detail.
No, it changes everything. He says training can't just be about spending hours out anymore, like maybe when he was younger.
It needs to be, what did he say, smarter?
Smarter and very specific. That's the key shift.
So with Western states coming up, what are the specific things he's targeting with this smarter approach?
Well, two main goals. First, adapting to the heat that's crucial for Western states.
Always a factor there.
Definitely. And second, adapting to the specific pace of an ultra like that, the sustained effort.
And he had that interesting point about metabolic versus neuromuscular.
He feels metabolically he's actually pretty good, needs to maintain it. But the neuromuscular side, he says that always lacks.
So that's where the real work needs to happen.
That dictates a lot of the focus.
And underlying all of this, he puts this, principle out there right at the start.
And health first idea. Performance is only the maximum expression of health.
Which sounds simple, but he really emphasizes it.
Totally. It's non-negotiable for him. Being healthy isn't just, not being injured. It's the actual foundation.
If you're not healthy, you can't train right, can't adapt.
And you definitely can't perform at your peak. It underpins the whole process for him.
Okay, so let's get practical. How does this smarter specific training translate into actual workouts described in the sources? What's the running part look like?
Okay, so there's a consistent structure he mentions. 3 specific running sessions every week.
And how long are those?
Usually around 35 to 40 kilometers each, so decent distance.
And not just jogging around the block, I assume?
No, definitely not. The structure is quite specific. He talks about including significant uphill work, mentions a local steep hill, like 700 meters of climbing, and then also running on the flat within those sessions.
And is there a pace target for the flat sections?
He's pretty clear about aiming for around ultra race pace on the flat, which he pegs at around 4 minutes per kilometer.
4 minutes per K for 100 miles. Wow. That puts the front end of that race in perspective.
It really does. And he's also using these runs diagnostically.
How so?
He says he's really trying to see how the body's holding up, specifically mentioning checking his TFL.
The hip muscle, tensor fasciae latae.
Right, that one. And his knees, making sure they're handling the load okay, which, at 37 and with past issues, that's crucial.
Makes sense. Now, the heat adaptation part in the sources was super detailed. What's the main goal there? What's he trying to achieve?
Fundamentally, it's about forcing physiological changes. He wants his body to learn to sweat earlier.
To cool down faster.
Exactly. Cool more efficiently and just feel more adapted, more comfortable when it actually gets hot during the race.
And the methods, they sounded pretty intense, almost like a lab setup.
They're very practical, very data-focused. It's done indoors in a room heated to around 40 degrees Celsius.
40 degrees, that's about 104 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, pretty hot. Sometimes even 41 C. And he wears a rain jacket on top of that.
To sweat even more.
You got it. Maximize the heat stress. And hydration during these is critical. He talks about drinking a lot of water with a lot of sodium.
How much sodium? He gave a number, didn't he?
He did. Around 3 grams of sodium per hour during these sessions.
3 grams an hour? That's a lot.
It is. The idea is that high intake helps push the adaptation process and helps the body learn to retain sodium better under heat stress.
So this isn't like a one-off get used to the heat session then?
Oh, not at all. He stresses doing this a few times every week for a few months. Consistency is key for those adaptations to really stick.
And the sources mentioned a progression. He didn't just jump into running in the heat.
Right. He started cleverly. For the first 3 weeks, he did his heat training only on the bike.
By the blow.
Lower impact. It gave him that intense heat stimulus, but allowed his hip, TFL, and knees more recovery time, especially with the injury niggles he mentioned. Smart way to build tolerance.
Okay, so bike first, then what?
Then, for the next 5 weeks, closer to the race, he shifted the mix. 2 heat sessions still on the bike,
Right.
but adding 1 heat session actually running, usually on a treadmill, to get that sport-specific stimulus.
And that treadmill heat run sounds like a real beast.
It's designed that way. 90 minutes long. The room starts at 36°C, so already warm,
About 97 F.
and it gradually heats up to 40°C by the end. Plus, he uses fans blowing hot air directly at him to simulate that sort of desert heat feel.
Wow. That's dedication. And then there was that recovery detail afterwards.
The contrast bath. He mentions going straight to the sea after a heat run.
For cold plunge.
Exactly. He admits he's not really a sea person, so it's not for fun. He does it because, as he put it, they said that it would be good.
Huh. Trusting the science, or the advice anyway, the idea is that hot-cold contrast helps recovery.
It promotes blood flow, reduces inflammation, that sort of thing. Standard recovery technique, just maybe a bit more hardcore, going straight into the cold sea.
And he even shared some data points from one of these sessions, right? On the bike.
He did, which really highlights the unique stress. He mentioned his core temp hitting 40°C.
So fever temperature, basically.
Pretty much. Drank over 1.5 liters of fluid in just over an hour. And here's the interesting bit. His power output on the bike was actually quite low. 100 watts pushing, 120 pulling, he said.
But his breathing and perceived effort were high.
Exactly. RPE was high, breathing was heavy. His point was, even though the mechanical work, the watts, might be low, all the rest of the systems are working hard.
The thermoregulation, the cardiovascular system.
Right. They're under massive strain. So the session feels hard, and is hard on the body, just in a different way than pure muscular effort. It's really targeted stress.
Speaking of managing the body, the sources also touched on a recent injury that shaped this training block.
He talked about a hip issue that popped up, which then caused some TFL and knee pain. It came after he tried to add too much speed work too quickly, following a year where he'd logged massive volume over 1,400 hours. Even elites aren't immune. It shows how sensitive the body can be to changes in stimulus.
So how did the sources say he's managing that practically? What's the strategy?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. His explicit plan is to keep the running to the minimum, precisely. Focus on those key running sessions we talked about, and then use the bike for the rest of his aerobic volume until the pain completely settles down.
And you mentioned that approach is working.
Yes, he said it seems to be working well. It's a conservative, smart way to handle it.
Which again ties back to that whole being 37 thing.
Absolutely. Recovery is slower. Cell regeneration, as he notes, just isn't as fast as it used to be.
So adapting now means really getting that, understanding those changes.
And learning to play with them, as he puts it. You have to work with your body's current reality.
Which translates to
a much bigger focus on recovery, being really careful about the timing between hard sessions, and just being ready to adjust the plan based on how you feel day to day.
It's a trade-off, maybe. Slower recovery, but maybe more experience.
That seems to be the implication. His decades of experience, the long-term adaptations he's built that probably helps compensate for some of the pure physiological shifts of aging. He knows his body incredibly well.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Beyond the physical grind, the sources had some really interesting bits on the mental side. The discipline needed.
Especially when you live somewhere like Norway, surrounded by amazing mountains, perfect for skiing, climbing, scrambling, all the fun stuff.
Right, but the training demands specific, sometimes less glamorous work. Flat running, gym work, indoor sessions.
Exactly. Sticking to that highly specific plan when the mountains are calling requires real intention, as he calls it. Finding the purpose in those sessions.
But he doesn't totally cut out the mountain time, does he?
No, and that's key for balance. He still does 1 or 2 sessions a week up in the mountains.
Why?
He sees them as mental work sessions. They help him maintain that connection, that broader enjoyment and intention, keep the spirit happy. But he's careful that the main focus, the bulk of the training, stays laser focused on Western States prep.